You let Ashley in too?
Yes, I don't see Ashley.
She's on the bottom. Yep, she's there. She
Oh,
was
there you
there.
go. Okay. Ashley, I am going to,
Where'd she go? Oh, there she is. You were black and white completely. Now you're color.
Ashley, I made you a co-host.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right, we're recording, so
Ready?
yes.
Okay, all rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilman Alvarez,
Present.
Councilman Larka,
Here.
Councilman Lord.
Here.
Councilman O'Connor. Councilman O'Connor?
Here.
Oh, sorry, Supervisor Hay?
Here. Okay, I'll make a motion to open the public hearing and waive the reading of the public hearing notice.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, this is a commercial campus at Field Corner public hearing on a special permit for light manufacturing use and abandonment demapping of Barrett Road. Mr. Richmond, would you like to begin?
Yes, Mr. Supervisor, we have a PowerPoint presentation that we'd like to present. So good evening, Supervisor Hay and members of the town board. For the record, my name is Daniel Richmond. I'm a partner with the law firm Zarin and Steinmetz. Here on behalf of Putnam Seabury Partners LP, the applicant for the commercial campus project. With me this evening is Peter Gilpatrick, an advisor to the applicant, Rich Pearson and Kevin Massavecchio from JMC, the project's engineering and planning consultant, and Chuck Dietz, the project's architect. If we could go to the next slide, please, Kevin. We're here this evening for 5 actions we're requesting of the town board in connection of the action. The first, special permit use. Commercial campus project as confirmed by the town building inspector is allowed within the subject OP3 district by special permit as a light manufacturing use. As we will explain this evening and as set forth in the final environmental impact statement for the project conforms to all applicable special permit criteria as set forth in section 13860 of the code. Next, the abandonment of Barrett Road. As a result of the project's comprehensive review under the State Environmental Quality Review Act, or SEQRA, which was led by the planning board, the project was substantially downsized and modified, including merging the originally proposed buildings 3 and 4 into one building, as we will explain. This modification, which was a result of a suggestion by certain planning board members, requires the town to formally recognize the abandonment of Barrett Road, which has not been opened and worked for well over 6 years. And in connection with that, and as a corollary to that, the applicant is asking the town to officially change its map to reflect this abandonment. With respect to the straightening of Pugsley Road, as we will also explain, the applicant is proposing substantial traffic improvements, including along Pugsley Road, which will become a heavy-duty roadway and which will be straightened. This straightening involves the applicant providing substantial lands to the town, almost 2 1/3 acres for this highway purpose. The town would also be abandoning for highway purposes land that as a result of the improvements along Pugsley Road are no longer useful for highway purposes. Most of this land would end up reverting back to the town. Approximately 2/10 of an acre would revert to the applicant as the abutting property owner. And finally, the last action, in connection with the improvement of Pugsley Road, the applicant is asking the town board to confirm that the New York State Department of Transportation restriction on large trucks from traveling beyond 1 mile from an interstate ramp can be extended up Pugsley Road to allow trucks to reach the project site. DOT has already conditionally approved this action. Go to the next slide. The project before you is the result of an exhaustive review led by the planning board pursuant to SEQRA, or the State Environmental Quality Review Act, which studied the potential impacts of the project in multiple areas, including land use and zoning, traffic, visual resources, wetlands, geology and topography, groundwater, vegetation and wildlife, taxes, community services, utilities, cultural resources, noise, construction, and air quality. And that review assured that the project's impacts in each of these areas were avoided or mitigated to the maximum extent practical as SECR requires. And again, this resulted in a substantial modification reduction of the project. The project began in 2018 with the submission of a draft environmental impact statement as a 4-building project and included development on a portion of the applicant's property in the RC district, which is no longer complicated. The planning board held 2 public hearings on the DIS and accepted written comments through September, and also held a special meeting to discuss the DIS comments. Throughout, for the next approximately 2 years, the applicant worked to prepare and file an environmental impact statement responding to all comments in the DIS, and that FEIS was revised multiple times in response to the planning board requirements and was finally deemed complete in July 27th. Even though not required by SECR, the planning board held a public hearing on the FEIS, and in September 28, 2020, adopted a detailed SECR finding statement that was 78 pages, including 9 pages detailed to establishing conditions for the project, again, which assures the project that avoids or mitigates all of its potential impacts. The planning board has also held hearings on site plans, subdivision, and wetland applications for the project. Those hearings have now been closed. And again, the project's environmental review involved coordination with multiple agencies, including the New York City Department of Environmental Protection, the New York State Department of Transportation, which have both indicated their conceptual approval of the project. And go to the next slide, please, Kevin. As reflected in the SECR findings, the project is projected to have substantial positive benefits on tax revenues and the local and regional economy, job creation, and the general economic health of the community. It's projected to generate approximately $31 million, or almost $32 million in property revenue over the first 15 years with a pilot. The pilot agreement would result in the project paying approximately 75% of its fully assessed property values, or more than $29 million if the project remained in its current undeveloped state. That would include $23,785,000 to the Brewster Central School District and $2.7 million to the town. The project also offers quality jobs and essential jobs. Warehousing and distribution, as the board is aware, is a rapidly evolving and essential component of our economy. At the planning board's direction, a study was performed using the impact analysis and for planning software, or IMPLAN, which uses proprietary multipliers to evaluate economic input, labor, income, and employment. This analysis, the IMPLAN analysis, indicated that the project would create nearly $4 million in indirect salaries, or 115 permanent offsite jobs, and in addition to the 1,040 essential worker on-site jobs, again, at 1,000 figures over 24 hours. So that's in addition to the $19 million in direct salaries, as well as over $3 million in local sales for business services. The project would also create 818 construction-related jobs and would increase demand for local businesses. Again, this is all without a significant municipal costs, including because the project anticipates no additional school children. I'm going to hand this PowerPoint off to Peter Gilpatrick, who will walk you through the project evolution.
Ian, can I ask you one question before you go
Sure,
off that
Mr.
page?
Supervisor.
When you were mentioning the taxes, you didn't mention Putnam County. Can you go over those numbers again for the 31? You came down to 29 million. I did not hear Putnam County.
It was $31,894,000 would be total in the pilot. I think 23,785 would go to the Brewster Central School District, 2.7 million for the town. I'd have to look up the figure that's going to the county. I don't have that offhand.
Okay, I thought I missed it, but I didn't. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Dan. Good evening, everyone. I'm Peter Gilpatrick, an advisor to the applicant, and will help present the proposed project this evening. This slide shows the site plan from the FEIS for the 328-acre property. To orient everyone, I-84 is at the bottom of the slide. Tilly Foster Farm and Route 312 are to the left. Hunter's Glen is at the top, and Twin Brook Manor and Patterson are to the right. Plan features 2 buildings totaling 933,000 square feet, a decrease of approximately 17% from the original 4-building DEIS plan. The access to the project is from Route 312 and up Pugsley Road, approximately 3/4 of a mile on a newly rebuilt roadway. Pugsley Road will remain seasonal and under-improved beyond the proposed project and into Patterson. There are 2 gatehouses at the entrances to the buildings. Project's water and waste systems are self-contained on the property, with 2 on-site wells providing water, a common storage tank, and several septic and stormwater facilities shown in the light green areas. During development, only 115 acres, or approximately 1/3 of the 328-acre site, will be disturbed. Following development, approximately 85% of the property will remain open space under the town's definition. Next slide, please, Kevin. The applicant has answered concerns expressed by the town, residents, DEP, and DEC about future development of the property by restricting building to the 2 buildings shown on the plan and thereby limiting future expansion and associated environmental and traffic impacts. The yellow ghosted areas show the no-build areas where additional buildings will be prohibited, leaving approximately 172 acres of the property as undisturbed natural habitat. The board may recall the property is situated within 2 zoning districts, RC Commercial and OP3. This plan prohibits building on the rural commercial land, helping to preserve the town's highly valued rural character. Next slide, please.
Again, so we're going to walk you through the special permit requirements for the town code. Again, pursuant to section 13860 of the town code, all buildings shall be of masonry and wood frame construction on that portion of the building that faces the street. And the 13860B, architectural plans and landscaping plans are required to be submitted to the planning board prior to an approval.
And next slide, please. This is a rendered image of Building A from the access drive onto its grounds that was presented on October 26th to the planning board. Landscape details were left off this rendering to better show the building's features and generate comments. The precast masonry building conforms with town code special permit criteria without waiver or variance, including height and massing. At the planning board, public hearing on October 26, concerns were expressed about the building's lighter colors, the white stripe at the top of the building and the windows near the top of the building just below the stripe. New darker gray and green colors will be used to lessen the building's visual impact, and the small windows facing the residential communities will be eliminated. The building is 44 feet tall to the top of the parapet with a permitted height of 45 feet. The roof will be several feet below the parapet and support rooftop equipment as required by the occupants. All rooftop equipment will be screened as required by town regulations. The next slide, please. Traffic mitigation is an important element of the project. As a result of traffic mitigation, measures identified in the FEIS and required in findings, the project has a net 1% impact on the aggregate service levels of over 100 traffic movements studied under the town's method of measuring service level. The slide shows an aerial view of the I-84-312 interchange and the 312 corridor south past Tilly Foster Farm. Working clockwise from the upper left, DOT has installed improvements to the lanes and signals at the I-84-312 interchange. The project will fund additional lane and signal improvements at the Independence Way and 312 intersection. Caramount has completed a driveway connecting to Independence Way, reducing dependence for access to that project from 312 and improving traffic flow and safety on 312. Following occupancy, studies will be prepared to evaluate signal timing on the 312 corridor and determine whether the Prospect Hill 312 intersection can be signalized. The applicant will make a fair share contribution of $150,000 to fund the studies and to contribute to the recommended improvements. A new traffic signal will be installed at the Pugsley 312 intersection, and approximately 3/4 of a mile of Pugsley Road will be rebuilt consistent with the town engineer's recommendations. 312 from Pugsley to I-84 will be widened and improved to 4 lanes with 2 lanes in each direction. DOT has reviewed and conceptually approved these improvements. The next slide, please, Kevin. The new traffic light at Pugsley Road and 312 is a key element of the proposed project. The signal is demand responsive, which means traffic must be on Pugsley Road waiting to enter 312 before the signal is activated red for the 312 traffic. During peak rush hours, traffic along 312 will be green an estimated 85% of the time. 80% of the traffic to and from the proposed project will travel less than a mile north along 312 to I-84. The widening of 312 to 4 lanes in this area will provide the capacity for this traffic to comfortably and safely flow to I-84. The 312 Pugsley Road intersection will be widened to provide both through and turning lanes in both directions. Next slide, please.
Again, further requirements and criteria under the town code for special permit. First, that additional screening or planting must be provided around all storage areas if these storage areas face adjacent property and or the street. And also that all outdoor storage areas shall be delineated on the site plan. A fence, hedge, berm, or alternative pavement pattern shall be used as appropriate to clearly identify the permitted area for outside storage.
Next slide, Kevin. Thanks. Outdoor storage areas for trash and refuse are located along the loading sides of the building, abutting each building on paved fingers between the loading docks. Each outdoor storage area will be enclosed with a 6-foot fence as shown on the slide. The next slide, please.
Finally, the special permit criteria under the town code, that delivery hours shall be regulated by special permit and shall be noted on the site plan. The secret, as set forth in the secret findings adopted by the planning board, the delivery times are already set or proposed Monday to Saturday, 6 a.m. to 11 p.m., Sunday, 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. And finally, F, that appropriate buffers between any component of the proposed use and adjoining properties, given the proposed use, the use of adjoining parcels, and the natural topography and vegetated cover shall be established by the special permit and shall be identified on the site plan.
Next slide, please. Throughout the secret process, concerns were raised about the visual and acoustic impacts of the proposed project. The next series of slides will demonstrate how the proposed project has addressed these concerns. The first element to reduce impacts is distance. Within the proposed 2-building site plan, all residents are approximately 1/4 of a mile away from the nearest building, and Tilly Foster Farm is approximately 1/2 mile from the nearest building. Planning Board Seeker's finding statement concludes that the applicant's noise mitigations will ensure that the proposed project will be dramatically less than the requirements of the town's noise ordinance and otherwise produce no significant adverse noise impacts on the neighborhood. Further states that truck access to the buildings will not adversely impact the residents of Hunters Glen and Twin Brook Manor. Noise mitigations recommended in the finding statement include restricting trucking activity to the loading dock I-84 side of the buildings, away from the residences, prohibiting truck circumnavigation of the buildings, restrictions on nighttime deliveries, anti-idling restrictions, prohibitions on overnight facilities for truckers, installing a 12-foot berm on the west end of Building B, and strategic landscaping. The next slide, please. To help us understand the project's impact on the residential communities, we've prepared a typical topographical cross-section. The views from Hunter's Glen are seen along the yellow line from the residences to Building B over approximately 1,400 feet. The views from Twinbrook Manor would have similar characteristics. This topographical cross-section demonstrates how buildings are sited to minimize visibility within the community. The distance from Hunter's Glen residence to Building B is approximately 1/4 mile, which is similar to the distance from Twinbrook Manor. Both Hunter's Glen and Twinbrook Manor are over 100 feet in elevation below the floor elevation of Building B. The preserved natural habitat buffer of at least 800 feet provides a deep and dense vegetative protective filter that reduces both noise and visual impacts from Building B to the residential communities. The color scheme of the buildings is designed to minimize building identity and reduce visibility within the community. While the buildings are 44 feet high, lighting will not exceed 21 feet and be dark sky compliant. All signage facing residential communities will be non-illuminated. Strategically placed landscaping will further restrict visibility and reduce noise transmission. The next slide, please. Building B, outlined in the yellow pinstripe, is not visible from the nearest residence at Hunter's Glen under a leaves-on condition. The next slide, please. However, Building B is partially visible from the nearest residence at Hunter's Glen under a leaves-off condition. Let's go to the next slide. Building B, outlined in yellow, in the yellow pinstripe, will not be visible from the residence of Twinbrook Manor, and this is a leaves-off condition. And the next slide, please. Buildings A and B, outlined with the yellow pinstripes, will not be seen from Tilly Foster Farm due to favorable topography. In other words, the buildings are behind the hill. And slide 20, buildings A and B outlined in yellow pinstripes will not be visible from the Route 6 crossing of Middle Branch Reservoir and further preserve the community's rural character. Next slide, please.
Thanks, Peter. Following site walks and discussions with the planning board and its consultants, the recommendation was made that the originally proposed buildings 3 and 4, which are seen here in reddish outline, be merged into one building, including to move the project 600 feet further away from Twinbrook Manor so that the project is now more than 1,200 feet away from that residential development. This requires that the project be located over the former Barrett Road. Barrett Road has not been opened or worked for more than 6 years, and by operation of law under New York State Town Highway Law, Section 205, is deemed by law abandoned. We are asking the town board to recognize this fact and to change its official map to reflect this reality. Next slide, Kevin. Again, as I discussed earlier, the project includes substantial improvements to Pugsley Road and straightening it out. To allow for this to happen, the applicant would be donating approximately 2 1/3 acres to the town, which is including some of the land shown here in orange. And you can see it sort of to the right, as well as along Pugsley Road. And following this improvement, there will be certain land that is no longer of use to the town for highway purposes, which the applicant would request that the town abandon for this purpose pursuant to New York Highway Law, Section 212-A. Much of that land would revert to the town, including, for example, as you see, the blue property to the right, which would go from town right of way to town parcel. And again, about 2/10 of an acre would revert to the applicant as the abutting property owner, which is sort of imperceptible along Pugsley Road here. So direct out there. To the left, you can see there's property that the applicant is proposing to donate to the county in connection with Tilly Foster Farm. And there's a portion there that along the road 312 that would be donated to the DOT for use in connection with highway improvements there. Go to the next slide, please. New York State Department of Transportation restricts large trucks from traveling beyond 1 mile from an interstate ramp unless DOT issues an extension approval which has conditionally approved for the project. As you can see in the yellow, the 1 mile route goes very far up Pugsley Road, but doesn't quite get to the project entrance. We would be requesting that the town confirm to DOT that that approximately 0.3 of an acres could be lifted from the restriction on large trucks so that they can get to the project. The remainder of Field Corner Road in purple is going to be left unimproved as a dirt road. We go to the next slide. Concerns were raised during the project seeker review about trucks seeking to access the site through Patterson by going down the dirt road portion of Fields Corner Road. To be clear, this portion of Fields Corner Road is not going to be improved, and frankly, from the applicant's perspective, it would be virtually impossible for a truck to go down that road. But nevertheless, the planning board's secret findings require the applicant to install height clearance bars and gates to address this concern. The applicant is also required to install video cameras at these locations to monitor traffic along this portion of Field Corner Road, as well as signs indicating the prohibition of commercial trucks and progressive fines currently established by the town for restricted road use violations. The applicant will record this video information on a 24-hour loop and would provide it to the town or the Putnam County Sheriff at their request to determine if any tickets should be issued. Projected traffic volumes along this portion of Field Corner Road are low. For example, 22 trips during the weekday, 7:30 to 8:30 a.m. But if the planning board finds that traffic volumes along this portion of the road exceed that area, the gates can be closed. Go to the next slide. That concludes our presentation. We're here for any questions. Mr. Supervisor, you had asked previously, or you'd asked me what the county would be getting under a 15-year project for the pilot. Under my quick calculation, it's about $2,993,000. That does not include the sales tax benefits from the project.
Okay, thank
Here,
you.
if there are any other questions from the board?
I have some, but I'll let my colleagues go first.
Sure.
I have a few. So on slide, can you go to slide 24? So I know we had talked about this a bunch of times when I was on the planning board, but correct me if I'm wrong, but it's my understanding that certain roads in the state are built to, or trucks of a certain size can only drive down roads built to a certain spec. And I know that the traffic analysis assume that most of these trucks will make it to the highway and get on the highway. And there was a few questions, and I can't recall the answer. If these trucks were to continue traveling down 312 towards Brewster, towards like the high school in 22, is that road at a spec that would be able to handle those 55-foot trailers?
Again, I think, well, if you could, if you could let Rich Pearson, who's our traffic consultant, in, I think he could address the question. My understanding is that restriction, the 1 mile restriction, applies, as you said.
Well, not the mile. Okay, we'll keep going. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, it only applies to, not to all trucks, but just to larger trucks.
Right, the 55-foot trailers, right?
Yes.
Okay. So I guess my question is really twofold: is or maybe it's one and the same, that can trucks travel past that southern or that the entrance to 84 on the bottom of that slide and continue going down 312? Yeah.
I don't believe that, but I think that's the point of the highway access restriction.
Okay, and then I guess my other question, I think I unmuted Rich, but can trucks that are 55-foot in length, are there restrictions on certain roads for trucks that size?
Yes, there are. So Richard Pearson with JMC. The 53-foot trailer, they can go within the 1 mile of interstates and other certain specified roadways. But to your question, they could not go from, for example, this area that we're looking at over to Route 22. They could travel a portion of 312, but they could not get to Route 22.
Okay, so, and then I guess, just to clarify, because it always comes down to enforcement, but if a traffic cop was sitting on the end of North Brewster Road, any 55-foot trailer that drove down 312 would technically, be subject to a fine.
Correct. It's a 53-foot trailer, but you are correct.
53-foot trailer, okay.
Eric, and I could just say that quickly, that would apply to all trucks and traffic on 312, not just this project.
Yes.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, because I've seen some, and I don't think cops are out looking for that, but if it became a problem, it seemed like we'd have some sort of enforcement that we could lean on.
Correct.
I recently took a road trip down to Cape May, and I passed the Amazon warehouse and a Wayfair warehouse, and they had tons and tons of trailers, not trucks, but trailers stored outside. And if I recall from the planning board, and you may have said in this presentation, there won't be any outside storage for truck trailers. Is that accurate?
No, it isn't. If we zoom into Kevin, can we zoom into one of the buildings? Because what we interpreted outdoor storage to mean something other than trailer storage or trucks at a dock. So if you look, okay. Yeah, there we go. You can see the docks are lined up along the building. And then opposite on the truck tarmac, there are trailer storage areas. And if my recollection's correct, they're about the same number of trailer storage slots as there are truck docks. It's about 1-to-1 for both buildings. But they're all on this side of the I-84 side of the building.
Okay. And then I thought you had said in your presentation also that you were going to make improvements, and you were hovering around the bridge area, but just to be clear, you're not making any road improvements over the 84 bridge, right?
No, sir.
On 312. Okay, and then lastly there's no overnight parking of tractor trailers on the site. Is that accurate?
That's correct.
Okay. That's all my questions for right now.
John,
Thank you.
John Lord.
Yeah, hi. I had some questions. So are you looking for us to give DOT instructions that we would be amenable to having 53-foot trailers go beyond the 1 mile limitation?
Just to go up Pugsley Road so that they could reach the project entrance.
And is that only for the construction phase, or is that forever?
No, that would be so that larger trucks, as we were discussing, could make deliveries to this warehouse and distribution center.
Okay, and is it only 53 footers that need this designate or need this special request? Would normal size trucks be allowed without this special request?
Yes, normal size trucks do not need this special extension.
So 53 footers are what you're looking for us to include in our confirmation to DOT that we would support that. Correct?
Again, just so that they could go up Pugsley Road. They're already allowed most of the way up Pugsley Road to the project site just to get them up to the project driveway. It's about a third of a mile.
Thank you.
Is it,
I'm just going to add one thing we didn't talk about. If a truck errantly came up here, both of these gatehouses are set up in a way that it facilitates a truck turnaround. So they can't go back. We've given them a good way to turn the truck vehicle around and go right back down Pugsley to 312.
Great, thanks.
John, can I do a quick backup while you're here?
Sure.
With the 53 and you have a 55-foot trailer, Okay, what is the largest trailers around the road currently? Do you know?
It's a 53-foot trailer. There was a talk of a 55-foot trailer, but we're talking about 53-foot trailers. These are very common along the interstates. You drive along them every day when you're out on any of the interstates, 84, 684, et cetera. So it is basically the typical truck for interstates travel.
And is that number written in the law, 53?
Yes, it's part of the New York State Department of Transportation Access Highway requirements and limitations.
And how long is the longest tandems?
I'm not certain.
You can tell me another time if you don't know, but I just like to know how long a tandem is. And there are the different length tandems. Don't have to tell me now. You can look it up and, we're going to give a 10-day period after this here for comment, and we'll take that comment at that time.
Very good. Thank you.
Go ahead, John, sorry.
That's okay. Another question. Do you have an idea who the tenants will be?
No.
No? Okay. I know that you're going for a special permit and for warehouse and distribution facilities as an industrial use. And Michael Levine's letter, he's the building inspector, code enforcement officer. He said that that Chapter 138 doesn't include warehousing and distribution facilities as an industrial use. It does refer to the action of processing and assemblage, which is consistent with a warehouse and distribution facility. So my question is really in vetting the tenants that might come there, will you require that they have processing and assemblage as part of their mix instead of just pure warehouse, just bringing in products and just storing them there?
Well, I don't know, Peter, if you want to talk, the nature of the business these days, John, is, for them to receive and redistribute. I think as, Mr. Levine's letter also notes that this interpretation was supported by the town comprehensive plan, which includes warehousing and distribution facilities specifically as light industrial. So I think, again, this project is being designed to work for, as you probably throughout the pandemic gotten, myriad Amazon packages that have all gone through this process of them being, receiving certain deliveries and then redistributing them for
yeah, I think that the places that would be processing and assemblage would have more employees and then give more employment to people,
right,
rather than just being a dumb building that is just housing or storing goods. So that's why my question is, will you be vetting the companies that are proposed to be tenants to make sure that they do have that mix of activity, so that we don't just have ghost buildings up there? That's all.
Well, look, I think the market these days, lends itself to this use of, like you say, not just using it just for warehousing, but for using it for processing, assemblage, and redistributing. That's, again, that's the entire analysis that we've done. And I think that's what's the use that makes the most sense for this is, again, is going to lead to, as we said, approximately we're anticipating over 1,000 jobs over the 24-hour period.
Okay, well, if that would be written into the special permit that they are going to be assemblage and processing facilities, that would be good. Another question I had was Barrett Road. You said that it's not been used in over 6 years, so it's been abandoned as a reason for the town abandoning it and providing it to the project for use. There are other roads in the town that are old farm roads that do not have any use, but they are greenways. They are places where people do walk and travel. I'm thinking of Nelson Boulevard for one. I don't see it as an abandoned road just because it's not been used.
Well, the standard, Mr. Lord, is open and worked. I'm very familiar with this property. There's been a gate across Barrett Road for as long as I can remember. I can't remember the last time a snowplow was there or anything. Again, pursuant to, I don't know about any other roads in the town. I'm just talking about Barrett Road. But again, pursuant to the highway law, section 205, that meets the criteria for, again, it's already been abandoned by operation of law. We're really just asking the town board to recognize that and to change the map to reflect that fact.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
John O'Connor?
I think there was also at some point mentioned, you would invite the community. I'm sorry if you can't hear me, is it a little loud back here, but you'd invite, community comment on perhaps making like walking trails, riding trails back there to go along with the rustic nature, rural nature, the surrounding property around the warehouses. Is that still going forward?
Peter, I don't know if you want to take that or do you want me to?
We did talk about that. We haven't actually included it in our findings at this point. And yeah, we have a lot of open and undisturbed space, which was an accommodation to the community to restrict the environmental impact of the project long-term. And I'm not the owner, but I would certainly think that we could have a dialogue to see, we have certain concerns about public use of private property, and they go to, liability and insurance and, what people do. But setting that aside, we'd need to protect the buildings and the operations there, both from people and so that people don't get involved and engaged in that in a way that might hurt them. But so I suppose the answer is maybe, but we'd be open to having a conversation with you, sir.
Okay. Thank you.
Edwin?
No questions. Thank you.
Can I follow up on John's question?
Sure.
I know that Barrett Road's been closed for many years. I think I know that Dan and Peter know that I have ridden on Barrett Road with my mountain bike for the last couple of years, and it connects at the other end to roadways going into Tilly Foster, and it did at one time connect to John Simpson Road.
Mm-hmm.
So if it could be looked into as providing some sorts of trails from the old Barrett Road that you're looking for us to abandon, and going along your property line to connect to Fields Corner Road down at the end, that would provide, I think, the residents of Hunters Glen and Twinbrook Manor with recreational facilities that I think they've been using over the years anyway. But just an idea. And thanks, John, for bringing that up.
Thanks for fleshing it out for me.
Okay, while we're on, go ahead, where was it going?
I was just going to just briefly, I mean, Mr. Lord, I think you did raise during the DIS period the question about Barrett Road at one point connecting to John Simpson Road. And as a result of that, we did some detailed title search, which showed that there's, that road doesn't show on anyone's title policy is going through to John Simpson Road. So historically, I don't know, that may have happened, but it does no longer do that.
No, I know. You replied in, I I think your response to my question during the DIS. And I guess you pointed out that it shows on two different property owners' maps as belonging to the other person, which would be consistent with a road that neither one of them has to pay any taxes on. So as property, so it does exist, it has existed. And, but thank you. But if it could be looked at to continue to provide possible outdoor recreation to residents, as John had mentioned, that would be great. Thank you.
Okay, we're on picture here, number 26 of 26. Can you explain to me the double red kind of dotted line going up to the Barrett Road? And so where does the road improvement go to exactly that you're going to do? And what is the double red line? 26 to 26.
So the road improvements are going to stop right at the site driveway, which goes up to building B. And then there's a gate and the clearance bar here, and the road will be unimproved north of the site driveway towards building B.
Can you go back to the other one so I can actually see it
Yes.
better maybe? So,
So
okay.
the
Okay,
road will be,
Why is it double, why does it show double red? Just, why is that?
it's just a property line on either side of the road.
Okay, now the bottom piece that sticks out, that's going to the county property?
Yeah, that's Zimmer Road.
Okay, and show me now right there, where is the height restriction bar gonna be?
It's going to be right north of the site driveway to building B.
Okay, and there's a turnaround there, so, and then you mentioned a gate. You didn't mention that early on, and I was gonna ask the question, but now you mentioned the gate, but I didn't hear it in your presentation. Is there a gate going there?
Yes, there would be a gate there that would remain open. We would install it, but again, the planning board would have the opportunity to review, and if it ever appeared that the traffic that we're projecting that goes down Field Corner Road is in excess of what's presented in the FEIS, the planning board could direct that gate be closed except to emergency vehicles.
For some reason, I thought that gate was gonna be put at the Patterson southeast border. I mean, you're letting those trucks come an awful long way, if they even come up that way.
Well, they're actually going to be, Kevin, can you go to the slide that there are actually going to be two locations that are going to have clearance bars and height. You're right. One is down by Barrett Road to prevent trucks going that way, and the other one is closer to the border, as you said. And there's a turnaround area, if you can see there, for trucks.
Okay. And the crash bars are gonna be the responsibility and maintenance of your company? If someone hits it? Yes,
Yes.
was it
Yes.
yes?
Yes,
Okay,
yes is the answer.
okay. Is that gonna be written in somewhere as well? In the document somehow?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I'm good. Okay. Eric, unless there's any more comment here from the board, we're gonna go to the public, explain to them how they can speak. And let me give everyone a phone number. If for some strange reason you can't get through, I'll give you a cell phone number. So write this down quick. 845-729-1751. If you are trying to speak and for some strange reason you can't go through, call that cell number and we'll deal with you exactly somehow, so you have an opportunity to speak.
Okay, so everyone can raise their hand. I think if you click on participants and then you go by your name, there should be a button that you can click to raise your hand. I see one person's done it. You could also write in the chat that you would like to be unmuted to me. And then Ashley, since you're on, I forget what they need to press if they're on the phone. Do you recall?
It's either *9 or *6 to
All
raise
right,
your hand from the phone.
I'll Google that real quick. And then, so there's a few people that raise their hands.
Oops.
Mr. Joyner's trying to speak or not?
So there's an iPad, Miriam, that's,
Yeah,
there you go.
are you ready for me?
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead.
I have three very quick questions. One, would the truck will be able to make right turn on Route 312 to reach Route 6 down below? Or they were forbidden? One.
Okay, let him answer one at a time, maybe.
Okay.
Dan, someone from your team?
Rich?
I'm not sure I understood the question. Would trucks be able to make a right turn?
Coming out of Pugsley Road, going toward Carmel on 312.
Yes, they could take a right turn.
Yes?
Yes.
Okay.
How many trucks are we talking about?
Rich, do you want to deal with the?
Sure. Kevin, you want to bring up that slide?
Yes.
Nobody said how many trucks are we talking about on a daily basis?
They're gonna answer you now.
So we looked at the trucks on a couple different sources. We looked at it based on the Institute of Transportation Engineers data. And based on that, we would expect to have 212 trucks per day. That's 212 entering and 212 exiting. But what we also did is, at the request of the town planning board, we looked at the GAP and Matrix facilities. The GAP is in Fishkill and the Matrix is in Newburgh. And based on the local data, we expect there could be substantially fewer trucks, which is 130 daily trips, 65 trucks entering and exiting. If you take the average of the two sources, you could expect 138 trucks entering and 138 exiting. Again, the majority of these trucks are destined to and from I-84.
And
Now that's I-84. The question was, of course, going right, and there's no way you can tell how many are gonna go to Carmel.
They are permitted to go to Carmel. We don't expect that to be a substantial number.
my concern, not that they will make it to Carmel, but they take Route 6 toward the village of Brewster.
The larger trucks would be prohibited based on that same New York State law to take the left turn and head towards Brewster.
No.
You saying
no,
take a right-hand turn?
Right, yeah, right-hand turn.
I'm sorry, right onto 312, and then once they were on 312 and reached Route 6, they could take a right towards Carmel, but they would not be permitted to take a left and go all the way into Brewster.
Okay, and the last question, you're talking about 2.9 million for the town. Is that 2.9 million per year or through 15 years?
That's over 15 years with a pilot.
So it's really not much money for the town.
I agree.
But I think it's an entire package of economic benefits for the town, including $19 million in salaries and other offsite benefits to local businesses. Again, a significant sales tax revenue as well.
Allow me to disagree with you, because the people who are going to come to work are not necessarily resident of the town to start with, so they don't pay anything to the town. Secondly, you're going to impact on the west side all the businesses that we have already because of the traffic. So all the small businesses that we have around the Green Building and Home Depot are going to suffer because of your traffic. So the town may lose money because of that. It's one. If you're talking about overall $32 million spending and the town get really a peanuts, I don't think that is right.
Respectfully, I disagree. I mean, I think, again, the conversation we've had with local community business leaders indicates they're quite excited for this project.
Not what I hear.
Miriam, any other questions?
Not right now, no, thank you.
Mrs. Joyner, are you trying to get on? Okay, Mrs. Joyner is trying to get in, Eric, somehow. George, you know how to get on? There you go.
Okay. Okay, I'm concerned about the hours, 6 a.m. to 11 p.m. That's a lot, many hours with noisy trucks back and forth. So that worries me very much. And we haven't said anything about the workers. How are the workers going to get there? How many cars? What'd you say, 1,000 workers? So what do we have? 500 cars coming each day? So that's another big concern, not just the trucks in and out, but the workers' cars coming in and out, okay? And where are they supposed to park? You didn't show us anything on your maps of where the parking is for the workers. But I'm very concerned about the hours. 6 a.m. is very early and 11 p.m. is very late for all these trucks in and out.
One thing we forgot to mention, Miriam lives in the town of Southeast, and Mr. and Mrs. Joyner live in the town of Southeast. When you come in, I can read your names, but for everyone else, just state your name and where you live if you would, please, okay?
Fine.
Thank you. Next
So what
person.
about parking for the workers?
Rich, did you hear that parking for the workers? That was a question?
I'm sorry, I heard about part of the question, but I didn't hear the whole
Okay.
question again. So Peter, do you want to handle part of that or?
Sure, if we could go to a site plan, and we didn't say it, so I apologize that. The truck docks are on the I-84 side or the lower side of the buildings. On the upper side of the buildings, you will see employee parking. And it is actually designed to occur in 2 phases. The 1,100 jobs go over 3 shifts, and we've been advised by industry experts that roughly 50 or 60% of the people come for the first shift. Shifts for these buildings are a little earlier than the rush hour shift, so they're not totally aligned. So they might start at 6 or 7 in the morning, but not 8 or 9 like an office job. And we have 2 sets of spaces where we can either land bank one set if we don't need them, or the occupant doesn't need them, or we can deploy them. But we've got asking for site plan approval for the total envelope so that we can accommodate the projected workforce of 1,040 in 3 shifts.
That answer your question, okay?
Yes, it doesn't answer my concern about the long hours, 6 a.m. to 11 p.m. Now, are you saying that Hunter's Glen and the other one is not going to be affected by the sound of these big trucks?
We've had an acoustical engineer study the project, and that is the conclusion. It's the conclusion in the findings. It's the conclusion in the FEIS, which are the questions to the original DEIS. But given the mitigations that are done and the way the distance, which is the great mitigating factor for sound, the acoustical consultant said that if these buildings were in place and with the limitations that we have, the operational limitations, it's likely to be as quiet or more quiet because the buildings will buffer the sound from I-84, which is the predominant background sound that you might hear.
Thank you.
One thing operationally is the trucks are not permitted to circulate the whole building, so the trucks are not going to be traveling on the side where the residential developments are.
Yeah, and show the little pinwheels, Kevin. These are turnarounds for trucks so that they cannot continue around the building. And then there's a separate drive aisle for automobiles to get to the automobile parking lots.
Okay.
Any other questions, Ms. Joyner?
Thank you.
So there's 3 other people with their hands raised, but before we get to them, it's if you dialed in with your phone and you press *9, that will raise your hand and we will get to you in order. So Jack Pizzicara. I don't know if I pronounced that right. You
Pizzicara.
Pizzicara. Sorry about that. We can
Yeah.
hear you.
Okay,
And you're,
thank you.
and where do you live, sir?
Hunters Glen,
you.
Applewood Circle. So can you please go back to slide 26 of 26, please? And I know you've given us a visual idea of the impact to Hickory Hollow Lane in Hunters Glen, but how about the adjoining areas such as Applewood Circle, which will be also visually impacted? Have you done any type of a study or a visualization so we can get an idea of what it might look like from there?
So the answer is, I believe, in the FEIS, and I don't have the map in front of me, but the acoustic, I assume you're speaking of acoustics. The acoustical engineer, I think, studied 8 different locations, several of which are in Hunters Glen, a couple in Twin Brook, and also down Fields Corner into Patterson, where there are a couple of homes, to write his conclusions.
I actually meant the visual impact to the resident.
We studied the closest place,
Correct.
which we studied the closest.
Okay, that's correct. That's Hickory Hollow Lane. However, it does impact other areas, which did you study them as well to see what the visual impact would be to them as well?
No, we did one per each community,
Okay.
and concluded that the density of the foresting down there and the distance would likely make the visual impact less and not more.
And
Not that it's more, I just wanted to see it if you had it to get an idea of the impact to the other surrounding areas, because it's quite a large development, as you can imagine, and there is quite a large amount of impact to the residents in those areas, which also leads to the importance of proper landscaping to buffer the visual impact.
I agree.
we are providing landscaping within our property, and then we are also proposing to have evergreen trees planted on the Hunters Glen property and Twin Brook Manor property as needed, as may be needed, as part of this project.
Okay,
Yeah,
that's
just
what,
amplifying what Rich said, the secret findings issued by the planning board already established that there's a $30,000 performance bond the applicants required to put up, specifically to put 50 evergreen trees in Hunters Glen and Twin Brook Manor. We understand the Hunters Glen Masters Association has indicated preference for them to have a control over that, and we're amenable to working with the Masters Association in that regard.
great, thank you. And just one more question, if I may, in reference to the noise of the idling trucks, which my understanding is they're not supposed to be allowed to idle. However, you know, in the winter time, if it's 0 degrees out and a truck is sitting out there, the guy might be inclined to take a ticket instead of letting his fuel gel up. Who's responsible for the enforcement of the idling part of it?
It would be the tenants, the way the findings are, the occupants of the building.
Okay,
And they're
So they-
specifically required to enforce the anti-idling, among other provisions.
okay. Thank you, gentlemen. That's all I have for now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So Mike Sheridan.
Yes, good evening, Supervisor and members of the board. My name is Michael Sheridan of Snyder and Snyder. We represent Hunters Glen Masters Association. There's a few points I'd like to just quickly go through, and some of them have already been brought up, and good questions by Mrs. Joyner and Mr. Pizzicara. The first thing that I want to point out is the no build zone. And I believe that was slide 6 of 26. The no-build area between Building B and the part of Hunter's Glen to the right side of Building B, as it were, is a very narrow area. And what we'd like to have done is have, since the applicant is appearing to indicate that they're not going to be improving that area, we'd like to have that done with a conservation easement so that no improvement can be made should the people involved with this application walk away from the project, that everybody in the future knows that that area cannot be improved with anything. So that's what we are asking for first. We don't see why that should be an issue if in fact they're not going to be improving that area. The trees and vegetation that is between Building B and Hunter's Glen is important for the screening. And as you can see on the slide, I believe it's 18 of 26, you're going to be able to see the building from Hunter's Glen during the winter months when the leaves are off the trees. And anything that's existing between Hunter's Glen and Building B is necessary for that screening. So we would ask that, again, a conservation easement be employed to make sure that there can't be any improvements in that area. The second thing that I'd like to bring up, there's been some discussion about what's going to be happening there, and the height of the building is one thing, with the machinery on the roof, which that has not been displayed or shown. There was some quick discussion of it tonight, that it's going to be there and it's going to be screened off, which is good. Screening is good, but we want to see what it's going to look like. Again, they've already shown that you're going to be able to see this building from Hunter's Glen. And the part of the building you're going to see is the top part, the roof specifically. And if there is mechanical equipment that's going to be coming off of that, the resident of Hunter's Glen should have an idea of what they're going to be looking at and be able to comment on what they're going to be looking at. And we also think this board and the planning board should have an idea of what they're going to be looking at and approving. So that's something that we haven't seen yet. If it's out there, we'd love to see it. If you haven't seen it yet, we'd love for you to ask for it so we can see exactly what's going to be done and how it's going to be impacting Hunter's Glen. Another thing is signage on the building. At the last planning board meeting, there was an indication that there's going to be as many as 3 signs on the side of the building facing Hunter's Glen. Although we've been advised that there won't be any lighting on those signs, we don't know where they're going to be going, what they're going to be looking like. And I understand maybe if the applicant doesn't know who's going to be occupying the building, they're not sure what it's going to look like at this point. But maybe we could at least get a size and a color scheme agreed upon, so that, again, during winter months, when they've already confirmed that residents of Hunter Glen can see this building, that they're not going to be staring at some large, brightly colored sign throughout the entire winter, or more than one sign. I think the noise comments were great. I think the hours comments were good. This is 6 a.m. to 11 p.m. That is very early and very late. I do have one comment about the pinwheels on the side of Building B. And if those areas are going to be where all the trucks are turning around, even if it's only some of them, but certainly if it's all of them, what you're doing is bringing the trucks around from the front of the building, where it may be, the sound may be shielded by the building itself, but then you're bringing it around to the side of the building where it has a direct line of, I'll call it sight, even though sound, direct line of sound towards Hunter's Glen. So I would be curious to have an explanation of if those pinwheels are for all trucks, only trucks that end up going in the wrong direction, and how many trucks a day will be turning around in those pinwheels and potentially sending noise directly towards Hunter's Glen. At the planning board meeting, there was some talk of this earlier, there indication there was going to be windows towards the top of Building B. It seems like those windows are no longer going to be on the side of Hunter's Glen, and we just like confirmation on that. And again, a plan showing exactly what this building is going to be look like, at least with respect to the side of the building towards Hunter's Glen. If there's not going to be windows, that's good. There was some concern that light might be emanating from those windows. So that's good if it's not there, but again, some confirmation of a plan of some sort would be great. The colors, again, earlier there was discussion of the colors of the building, how the planning board didn't like the white stripes going around the top, and that there's going to be more muted colors, darker grays and greens, which again is likely a good thing visually. However, we don't know what it's going to look like yet. And that's another thing that the residents should be able to view and look at so they know what they're going to be looking at, unfortunately, during the winter months when you can see this. And finally, one last point on the landscaping. Yes, it is true. We are working with the applicant to try and get something done. Unfortunately, the numbers are a little off, or way off actually from our standpoint. What Hunters Glen would like is funds given to Hunters Glen so that they can hire a landscape architect, do the landscape design, do the plantings, and do the maintenance on it, and be totally removed from the applicant, and they would take that responsibility on themselves, and they're only looking for money to set aside for that. One of the proposals at the moment, I believe, the applicant speak to that, is there's a bond or an escrow that would be shared by Hunters Glen in Twin Brook Manor, and that just doesn't seem like an answer that is acceptable, because then there could be some disagreement about how funds should be used between those two communities, and we don't want to have to deal with that as the next phase of this project for the residents of Hunters Glen. So I'd love to see answers to all those questions. And I'd also like this board to keep the public hearing open until we get those answers and are able to discuss them and comment on them. Thank you.
I can take the process comment about the architecture. The planning board will require that the architectural elevations be part of the approved site plan. It's going through the architecture review process, and any changes, once they have a user in mind, would need to come back to the town for reapproval.
The speaker now is Ashley Lai, planning for the town of Southeast. Anything else, Ashley, on that?
I mean, we can have further conversations with the planning board about how the funds would be administered.
Yeah, I think that's something we'd like to resolve. And also, I mean, if I don't know, if someone, just out of curiosity, if someone could give an answer about the pinwheels on the sides of the buildings and
Who's speaking now, if they could?
sorry, this is still Michael Sheridan, Snyder and
Okay.
Snyder, just looking for
Okay, thank you. I just couldn't tell.
no, that's okay. An answer at least to the pinwheel question.
Well, I mean, you raise a good question. I don't know how many trucks will use it because it's, some trucks can back in and pull straight out. It's there as a convenience so that trucks don't need to circumvent the building. You asked how many movements there would be in a day, and I don't think Rich knows the answer to that. If I hear I guess the threshold question is, if trucks are going to turn around there, am I going to hear them? And there's a calculation over distance, how noise dissipates, which we can involve our acoustical engineer with and determine the result.
I think we'd like that. I think we'd also like testing prior to that happening, and also while it's happening, to determine the difference.
Yeah.
See if it is in any way acceptable.
The
One of
finding.
the, yeah,
Go ahead,
one of the
Ashley.
finding statement requirements is that they do collect new baseline samples for the noise.
So that said differently, or said in the way your question is framed, there is post-development, post-occupancy testing to verify that the building performs as it was indeed intended to perform, or the planning board can ask for additional mitigations so that the building does perform the way it was intended to perform. So that's there.
Yeah, thank you. And I think if there's, as you're looking at this, if there can be some maybe thought to, if the trucks are turning around there, and I don't know, trucks turning sometimes seem to make a significant amount of noise if they're upshifting, downshifting to make a corner. Maybe there could be some thought to put some mitigation in to start to dampen some sound which are likely to happen because of those turnarounds.
We could look into some solid fencing in those turnaround areas.
That may be helpful. Thank you.
Michelle, are you comfortable with people speaking and not knowing who's speaking?
I'd appreciate if they would say their names every time.
I mean,
they come on.
when you start off, you're giving your name and where you live, but after someone else has spoken, just repeat your name again so we can, just for the record. It'd be
I
helpful.
was Richard Pearson, the last one.
Thank you.
Okay, who's next? Hey, Eric, any more hands?
Yeah, there's a bunch. So Alicia Russo.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so Alicia Russo, I live right on Fields Corner in Carmel. And just a couple of things, just to clarify, I know Mr. Lord was talking about that side being used as recreational. Actually, it wasn't that side near the warehouses. It's the other side where the open space was. But you are right that Barrett does go out to John Simpson. I've been out that way when I first moved here some 17, 18 years ago. So there is a connecting road. My questions more are about the truck noise with it being to the front. Obviously now Pugsley is going to have more noise on that side. How is that going to affect me down the road? Because it looks like the building is now a little closer. Is there some sort, I mean, I don't think you're taking any of the trees down that'll help, but I just want to make sure there's a good buffer there. Because I do hear 84. And 84 is farther than what you'll be from me. Any answer?
Sure, this is Peter Gilpatrick. The acoustical engineer did included your home, which I think is the closest.
Yes.
Okay, and did do tests there, and if you look closely at the map and the topo, you're buffered a bit by the berm on the west end of the building.
Okay.
And yeah, he concluded that you would not be disrupted by the noise, because he concluded that across the board. And I believe you're the one homeowner that is closest to I-84, at least when compared to Hunter's Glen or Twinbrook Manor. And that is the predominant background noise in this part of Southeast.
Right, okay.
But just to follow up, if I know it's online, if you look in the FEIS under the noise section, you'll see some very detailed answers to questions of this nature.
Okay, yeah, I was just looking at the new drawing. And the repercussion, yeah, someone had asked about, well, what Jack, I believe, asked about when idling, the owner of the facility will be in charge of addressing that. What are the repercussions if, I mean, obviously, I know the trucks, in the winter, to keep the oil from gelling, they have to run the truck. They'll take a ticket. An owner coming out and saying to somebody, listen, you got to shut down, it could compromise their truck. That could be, a $250 visit from leases versus letting it run. What's the enforcement going to be?
The enforcement as it's contemplated is that each occupant designates someone to be responsible for managing the truckers. They're not to lay over overnight. So they're to be there and to go. We're not accepting deliveries after 11 o'clock at night. So that cuts down access to that. My understanding of the building is that there's a great likelihood that there'll be electrical outlets for engine warmers, which I believe are in a lot of the newer trucks, maybe not some of the very old trucks. And so we cut the angle down as best we can, both with technology and through good operating procedures.
Okay.
But
And
it's also going to be a requirement of the town's special permit. This is the town planner speaking. So it would be enforceable by the town's code enforcement officer.
and does that mean a fine or, I mean, what exactly does that mean? I don't know.
It could be a violation, yes, which would be a fine. And it could also result in the revoking of the special permit if it was a repeated offense.
Okay. And lastly, the barricade that you mentioned, or the truck rebar with the height thing, they're going to be one by the Patterson border and one by, I saw over by the entrance. Where by the Patterson border? Because I will tell you, I just redid my driveway. I have been 14 years of people not being able to read that the road is closed. And as soon as they come up on the barricade, and some of these people are on the phone that didn't realize that the road closed for 14 years and would come down. And when the snow is piled up there, the only turnaround is my driveway. I have been out there with everything from buckets of water to standing, but they turn around in my driveway and ruin it. So now you're talking about putting something, and this includes trucks. So I just don't want to be in a permanent, at least with the barricades, sometimes they get bold enough to get out and toss the wooden barricade, which then I go and put back up. I just don't want it right at my driveway, leaving them the only option for it to turn around in my driveway, understandably.
Okay, this is Tony. And now, Dan, is there any way to go back? I believe you showed the one in Patterson. Is what you don't have, Alicia, by your yard, of course, is a turnaround, and they're proposing a turnaround. So Dan, if you can show them that turnaround?
Yeah, I think Kevin is pointing to right now. It's not
Right.
exactly, you can see your house is right there where Kevin is.
Right.
The bar is further down and there's a turnaround area specifically designated so that if a truck does go down there, they can turn around right there.
And I think that's great, but when you were talking about having the two height bars, you were talking about putting one down by the Patterson line, is that accurate?
No, they're right there where Kevin's showing you, right there.
Oh, perfect. I couldn't ask for anything better. I should be so lucky to have it this winter. Sounds good then. So that's well past me. So there's not even a thought process of them backing up. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Tony Hagan, you can put a sign by your driveway, go up a little bit more and turn around. There's a turnaround.
Any problems, call Tony, huh?
No, don't call me, call Alicia.
He did give his number out.
And the other thing, I know it would be nice to have everyone have facilities to what Mr. Lord was talking about, but acknowledging the gentleman that said that the liability would be an issue. Certainly if I was his broker, I wouldn't allow for the public to be on the property. There's just too much of an exposure. Peter said that. It just, unfortunately, not everybody behaves. And even though the kindness of your heart and an easement's in place, the minute they fall in a rabbit hole, the responsibility is transferred. So it'd be nice if we still had our open space over there.
We still do.
We have open space over there.
Yes. Right now.
Yeah.
And in the future, there's some, not as much, but some. Okay. And is anyone else have their hand up, Eric?
Let's see. Yes, hold on one second. So Allison Yara, I just unmuted you.
No. I don't know.
Maybe I didn't. Hold on.
It sounded like the same name that was just speaking.
Allison, are you there?
I'm here. Can you
Okay.
hear me?
Yes.
Okay, sorry about that. I had a couple questions. I live at Twin Brook Manor, on the board. There was a question about the trucks and their ability to make a right out of Pugsley and then head down towards Route 6. And I think the response was that they can make a right onto 6 and head towards Carmel, but not a left onto 6 and head toward Brewster. If there's the 1 mile restriction, why can they make the right on Route 6 into Carmel?
Because Richard Pearson with JMC, because that portion of Road 6 is a designated access highway as well.
So they can continue down 6. Can they turn onto John Simpson Road and then head back towards 84 in the, back up towards the direction we've been trying to hold them off from?
No, they could not.
Okay. Next question. If there's no tenant that's been identified, this project's been ongoing with a lot of work being done, for the greater part of 2 years. Obviously the community has a number of concerns, which, while there's been a few that have been mitigated here and the size of the project has been reduced, why proceed at this point with building 2 extremely large warehouses with the hope for a tenant to come? I think the questions have been raised in the past. Why not go for, existing space that could be utilized somewhere else versus disturbing, such a nice rural residential community?
Dan, do you want to answer that or do you want me to?
I'm happy. I'm trying to understand the question of why. I mean, again, this is, I think, to everyone who's been getting Amazon packages over the past 7 or 8 months or whatever, I think it's pretty clear that this is a use that's essential, that is desirable. And I think, we're proceeding with it because I think we're quite confident that there are people who are, willing and able, and there's not comparable space available for them to do this type of use.
And another clarifying question. Again, I think the delivery time has been cut back, although most of us are still not happy with the 6 a.m. to 11 p.m. operating. That's deliveries only. The warehouse itself will operate 24/7, correct?
Yes.
But that's for internal operations. That's where people, again, this is a distribution facility. I think, as Mr. Lord was saying, he wanted to ensure that there was some processing assemblage. That's a big part of what goes on overnight.
Yeah. So if I understand from what was said before, 1,100 workers, about 50% work first shift, split the other 2. That means there's potentially about 300 workers working the overnight shift. And again, I guess, the concern here is with, I don't want to say there's, potentially undesirable conditions that come through with regards to some of these workers, even though you've indicated they're essential. With them being so close to the residencies and 300 workers in a warehouse overnight, has there been any impact study where there's been warehouses this close to residencies? Again, I think part of the reason why you've got the 1 mile requirement on the 53-foot trucks is to probably keep those trucks and these types of warehouses away from residencies. So just wondering, was there any part of a study done with regards to maybe the social impact and potential, criminal activity given the closeness of the residencies again?
Well, I think we did study as part of the project at the request of the planning board, the GAP facility down 84, where there are residential projects. I've never heard a suggestion before of, anticipating that, people, who are working for their living are criminals. But I think what we've showed is that this doesn't impact, property values. And in fact, the property values of approximate residences to the GAP facility have continued to increase.
I could just add with that the the multifamily residences near the GAP facility are much, much closer than the residences to our proposed buildings. And many of those residential units in Fishkill were constructed after the GAP facility was constructed.
Michelle, that was Rich Pearson.
Thank
Yes.
you.
Okay, thanks. And just last question, I guess procedurally from the board, but what are the next steps from here?
Will? Waiting for the town attorney. Will? Or Ashley?
Well, I just unmuted you.
Okay.
I can start. So the next step for the town board would be to close the public hearings and which potentially could be this evening. And then at the next meeting, the board would be able to vote on the special permit and the road abandonment.
Okay, don't scare them. Now, I'm gonna tell you right now, at the end of this meeting, we're not gonna close the public hearing. It'll be left open for 10 days for public comment. Don't scare them, please.
Sorry.
We're gonna review this quite well, and we're listening.
Okay, thank you.
And then once the town board has finished its review, it has to go back to the planning board and it has to finish with the architecture review board as well.
Any other questions, Allison?
That was it. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, so next is Deb Dillon. You should.
Yes, hello, I'm Deborah Dillon. I'm a resident of Hunters Glen. We at Hunters Glen certainly have made our concerns known to the town board. We've had our counsel at Snyder and Snyder send written comments to the board, as well as Mr. Sheridan being present to reiterate those tonight. The conservation easement is one of great concern to us. When you talk about a quarter of a mile between building B, and that's the building line, I take it, not the parking spaces for 300 plus employees behind the building, even closer to Hunters Glen. It sounds like a great distance, but honestly, it's not at all. And so we have concerns about preserving the no-build zone adjacent closest to Hunters Glen as a no-build zone permanently. But also I heard tonight something that I don't remember hearing any discussion of previously, which has to do with this outside trailer storage that's being permitted in addition to or adjacent to the docks for the trucks. And my concern is there any restriction on what's going to be permitted to be stored in those trailers? Are they going to be, for example, permitted to store, put refrigerated trailers there, which would imply noise caused by fans and motors running to keep the refrigeration going?
And Richard, you got someone to respond?
Peter, you want to take that one?
The-
Well, what I could say is one aspect of it is that those trailer spaces have always been shown on the plans. But Peter, if you want to discuss the specifics of it.
the test at the end of the day is, yes, there's trailer storage, there are dock storages. Sometimes docks are used as trailer storage and not active. That's dependent on the user. Our test with the community is that once these buildings are occupied, fully occupied, we come back and we test the standards to which we built and the noise levels that come off of these buildings and the noise levels that are achieved or heard or monitored in the two closest residential communities, the 8 spots, including Alicia's house. And what the planning board has said is if you don't meet the criteria that you said you would, you need to do something to further mitigate that. And there are lots of things you can do to further mitigate it. So I would draw, if I were you, my comfort in the wording in the findings that tells everyone that there's a look back at the end of development to see that the buildings perform the way they were intended to perform.
Is there any restriction in the town code regarding what sort of materials could be stored, whether it's a dock space or an outside trailer space?
The town code does regulate outside storage. It requires that it be screened. It is subject to site plan approval, and there's a limit on the amount of outside storage that can be on a project site. So the finding statement requires, this is what it states. It says the action does not contemplate the outdoor storage of goods and materials as operations are intended to occur entirely within the buildings. Small temporary storage areas for empty pallets and trailers shall be designated on the site plan during the site plan approvals process. So it will only be allowed, these trailers will only be allowed to be stored in the trailer parking spaces that are shown on the site plan.
Is there any code provision regarding the types of materials that may be stored inside the trailers?
So the finding statement does require that no hazardous materials may be used or stored on the site, or they're not allowed to transport hazardous materials. But there's no prohibition on refrigerated food products.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next is call-in user 1. If you could state your name and where you live. I just allowed you to unmute. Are you there? I think we can hear you.
Hello?
Yes.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. My name is Ann Finizzi. I'm from Hunters Glen, and I've heard very interesting remarks concerning a whole plethora of issues and problems that is still attendant to this particular development. And I urge the supervisor not only to to make sure to keep the public hearing, not only the letter writing, but the public hearing itself opened, because there were very, very, very urgent issues that really need to be settled before anything is decided upon. I have several issues. And one is the extraordinary number of hours that this particular project is going to be operating, from 6 to 11 o'clock. During all that period of time in Hunters Glen is being detrimentally impacted on a whole variety of areas. And one of them is the hours of operation, because we are part of the Brewster school system. And the Brewster school system have buses that start here from Hunters Glen from 7:30 in the morning and continue on coming back at 4 o'clock. So the fact that you could have whether it's 212 trucks or 138 trucks proceeding up and down on this area, and the Brewster school system is off 312 west, so it needs to travel. It needs to travel that route, going towards 312, Route 6. And that is a huge, huge, huge concern that these trucks can make that right turn into Route 6. Now, one of the speakers did state the possibility that they could easily turn around and go down Fair Street and get onto 84 at say exit 18. Maybe that is a possibility or not. But what is really, really disturbing is that you have tremendous traffic occurring from 2:30 in the afternoon, and even before that time, going towards Carmel in Carmel, past the shopping centers. This is a tremendous traffic issue that I don't think you have adequately really examined or taken very seriously. Number two, I wish to remind everybody that Hunters Glen, with over 400 households, pays considerable taxes to the town. And we are being taxed on a homestead basis. So we are being taxed not as condo owners, but as single-family owners. So we contribute considerably to the town's coffers, and to the county's coffers, and to the schools' coffers. So I wish to remind, my own taxes this year are over $7,000. And for $7,000, I don't live on Hickory Lane or Applewood. But to have the gentleman from state that there was only one area in Hunters Glen that was examined for possible impacts is really beyond the pale. All those areas, and I know Applewood Circle, and I know Hickory Lane, all those areas need to be examined. Further, the suggestion that there be a conservation easement is absolutely well taken, because without a conservation easement, there is no way that we can protect the land. And as a matter of fact, even though you said that 172 acres would be open land and development would be prohibited and so forth, a conservation easement should be on those 172 acres. Because we did not have a conservation easement on some of the acreage on Pugsley Road is the reason why you were able to now have this particular project. Another point is that this development of 933,000 square feet is the largest development in Putnam County. It supersedes the 400,000 square feet proposed for Patterson Crossing and the 360,000 square feet. So this is a huge, huge development, and it needs to be more carefully examined. To state that that there is a maintenance of the rural character of this community is really laughable. You do rural, just the definition, and definitions, by the way, gentlemen, do matter. And to say that this is a maintenance of rural character, when you have semi-trailers, when you have the largest development, industrial development here in Putnam County, next to a farm, next to a medical building, next to retail, and next to two large developments, especially Hunters Glen. Twin Brook is not large, but there are residences there. The other thing is, I want to ask you, are you assuming that businesses are only going to be using I-84 East? What are your plans for I-84 going across the bridge to get to I-84 West? That isn't in the mix. I didn't hear anything of that kind. Could you answer that? What are your plans for that traffic? Because all you have is 2 lanes over there. Hello?
Dan Richmond, you want to respond or have someone from your team?
Sure. Rich Pearson with JMC is the traffic analysis that was in the DEIS as well as the FEIS thoroughly looked at all of the traffic. We looked at the intersection of the westbound ramps, and this has all been reviewed by the town's planning consultant as well as the New York State.
Yes, well, you know, we have experience, and I have experience with those that have you know, have been proposed, and then we have the ramifications of traffic and congestion and gridlock. When you state, by the way, to one of the speakers that, you know, there's always a look back, and in case anything happens, you know, the planning board has in its finding statement and so forth. If the speaker is still there, I just wish to remind you and the board that Pulte Homes in Carmel, the residents in that particular development, had been on to the planning board countless times to attempt to get the developer to meet the requirements of that finding statement. And I think that they finally had to litigate or at least threaten to litigate. So the look back, everything must be down before this development is decided upon. I thought that tonight there was going to be a discussion on the special permit. Am I wrong on that? Hello?
Will, you want to address that, or Ashley? I think we're discussing it now.
Ashley dropped off.
This is not a discussion of the special permit.
It's public comment. We're taking your public comment, and we'll incorporate some of this into the special permit. most likely.
You know, but there hasn't been. I haven't heard from anyone any comments made about the special permit.
It was all in our presentation, Richard Pearson.
No, I didn't.
Presentation.
I've been on the phone. I haven't heard explanations or comments from the board concerning this special permit.
This is a public hearing on an
I
application.
understand this is a public. I understand this is a public hearing, but on the agenda, it specifically said the public hearing would not be around trucks or conservation easements or other issues, but would be on the special permit.
It was all discussed.
A lot of the issues that are being raised would be included as conditions in a special permit. Do you understand that?
No, but the actual no, you're drawing circles around this. The actual discussion of the special permit, which needs a lot of discussion, whether or not this special permit should be even given. I did not hear the board. I did not hear one member of the board address the issues on the special permit.
That is the purpose.
The special permit has to do with the definition of light manufacturing.
I think that's already been determined by the building inspector.
I'm sorry, who is talking? Because I'm on the phone, and so I'm
Tony
not
Hay. Tony Hay. And
Tony. Oh, okay.
This is the normal procedure. After we have public comment tonight, we are listening, okay? We're taking notes, and when the special permit is drafted, which will be within the next month, 2 weeks to a month, we will discuss it at that time.
Well, that's, you know what, forgive me, Tony, but, or Mr. Supervisor Hayes, forgive this familiarity, but as I saw the agenda tonight, I saw special permit. And so there are issues about the definition of light manufacturing. There are issues about public knowledge of exactly what happened with Attorney Richmond requesting a definition and an interpretation, and having the special permit as part of the zoning code.
But that was determined, and that was determined long ago by the building department. I don't have the document in front of me, but at one point in time, the building inspector made a determination that it fits the light manufacturing category.
Right.
Yes,
That was over a year and a half ago, in January 2019. I mean, Ann, you were aware of that?
I have the
we
letter.
sought not to challenge that.
We could not challenge that because no one knew about it. I have a letter from my attorney, from James Bacon, who happened in April of 2019. You're absolutely right. It was almost a year ago, and more than a year ago, that he happened to come upon a video where it was discussed about the change, saying that the proposed use fits within the code's definition of light manufacturing. No date was given for the letter. He issued a freedom of information. I have your letter. I have Mr. Levine's interpretation, which claimed that light manufacturing would be that we had a light manufacturing code, and warehouse would fit within that code. But there's been no discussion of it. And since you're issuing a special permit, then therefore there should be discussion about it.
We will be discussing it when the special permit wording is drafted, not now. And you're questioning something.
Maybe again, I can stand corrected. I have let me see, chapter, it's in, here it is, chapter 17.38, light industrial zone. And here is the intent and so forth and so on. And it was issued April of 2019. At that particular time, by the way, which we learned beyond the 60-day deadline, because no one knew about it, because Mr. Richmond went to Mr. Levine and did not CC the town board or the planning board. And so we found out quite by accident, and a letter was issued by my attorney contesting that particular definition, and the fact that there was not adequate discussion surrounding it.
Well, I think this is, look, first I'll say this is a complete mischaracterization of what transpired. We did the normal
it's not
course.
a characterization.
There is a
I have
question
your
about
letter.
permitted use, and I allowed you to speak. Will you let me speak?
Yes, go ahead.
So we went through the normal course, which was to go to the building inspector and say, this is what we believe the use is. We then got a response from the building inspector confirming that it was. This is, to our knowledge, this was, public information. But again, this is the normal course. And again, I think it's pretty clear that if you go to the code, this is the only conclusion you can come to. We're doing processing that was contemplated by the code.
Well,
again, you knew about this for over a year, so I think you're trying to just create chaos at this point.
No, I'm not trying to create chaos.
If you have any comments about what the special permit is, I would suggest it. But again, look, I defer to the town board.
Yeah, I'm not trying to create chaos, Mr. Richmond. I'm trying to clarify exactly what happened. And what happened is that, yes, you did go to the building department. And as a matter of fact, here I have your letter, and I have all the correspondence that took place, and you received an interpretation from the building department, But what I am saying right now is that since the special permit is up for either approval or disapproval, then the issue that I brought up is relevant. You may not. I mean,
Well,
that is your interpretation.
I'll defer to the town attorney, but that I think jurisdictionally, you're incorrect, that this is what is and is not permitted is a determination of the building inspector.
That's fine. That is your prerogative, but it was also our prerogative as residents and as town board and planning board to have been apprised that such an interpretation was given. And as I said, it was quite by accident, and I have the letter here. Quite by accident that we found your letter, that we found Mr. Levine's interpretation, which my attorney James Bacon, had his own interpretation. And what I am saying now that the special permit needs to be looked at in a public manner. And
It will be. Okay,
and not issued.
And Ms. Venezzi, I don't want to invoke any kind of a time limit, so I'm going to give you 2 more minutes. I mean, there will be another, not a public hearing, there'll be, when the town board discusses the public hearing, we are taking whatever comments are being made tonight. We are not going back and try to overturn anything the building department has done. That's his interpretation. If you want to challenge his interpretation, fine. We are going to base our facts and our future on his determination. So you got 2 minutes from now.
That I understand, and I don't want to, belabor the point. But all I'm saying is that the public hearing on the special permit should also, and I have the right, and others have the right to, because this is a very, very critical point for the developer. He needs to have that special permit because warehouses are not in the zoning code. They're not. They may be in the comprehensive plan, as Michael Levine said, but they were not in the zoning code. And he needs to have that expedited. And instead of going to the Zoning Board of Appeals, where that legitimately should have been decided upon, yay or nay. I'm not going to say we would prevail or he would prevail, but that was the proper way to go. But there was a circumvention taking place. So when is the public hearing? Again, my understanding was that tonight was the public hearing on the special permit. So
and that's exactly what is taking place at this point in time. Okay, we're going to move on to the next person. Eric?
Yep. So it says iPad Miriam. I think you spoke earlier.
Is there, okay, before we go to a second round of anyone, is anyone that has not spoken as yet? I have one person that asked me to read something in the record, which I'll be doing. I see the name on the screen. They're not speaking up, but I'll speak on their behalf because they sent something to the town. Okay, if you come back for a comment, we'll give you 1 minute on a follow-up. So is anyone not spoken yet that would like to speak?
I don't see anybody raising your hand. Again, it says *9 if you're on the.
Okay, so we'll give 1 more minute. We'll give 1 minute to Miriam. She has her hand up, and 1 to Ms. Venezzi. And I'll read this into the record, and then we'll continue to move on.
Miriam, I've given you the ability to unmute yourself. Okay.
Okay, I have my question very quickly and very clear. When you gave me the number of trucks per day, is that based on your wishful thinking or about the number of slots that you have on the permit, how many trucks you can hold? In other words, you have right now loading zone for how many trucks? I mean, for the 120, for 200 or 500? Because who is gonna check on you, how many trucks coming, going?
I'll try to respond. It's based on industry standard. There's no guarantee. There may be more, there may be less, but it's industry standard by what they do it. Dan, can anyone else there help out?
Yes, correct. It's Richard Pearson. It's industry standard was one source. And then we, at the request of the town planning board, we also looked at the GAP facility in Fishkill and the Matrix facility in Newburgh.
So in other words, we end up with 500 trucks.
It would be less than 500. I think it was 424. That would be the total trips. And it would be half of those would be the amount of trucks. So the trucks would be entering and exiting.
No, but you said to me before, you just said that it's depend on the standard. In other words, the standard can change and we can have 500 trucks.
That would not be expected. And one point is that the trucks typically travel during off-peak hours of the adjacent roadways. So this has all been analyzed in the DEIS and the FEIS.
Okay, in other words, you don't give me a direct answer. Thank you.
Anyone else, Eric?
No, I just have a real quick question. All these questions sparked a question that I think I had a long time ago. I'm hoping that Rich Pearson, that you can respond to for the next meeting. We talked about the traffic studies, and I know that you had looked at GAP. I think when I was on the planning board, we had talked about that. And I think I do have a question in the FEIS that was never answered. And it was to find out how many employees are at the GAP facility. It just seems to me we're claiming 1,000 jobs, but we're saying they have a lot less traffic. And I just wanted to know what their jobs are too, because, actually, I think it'll help your traffic discussion. But just want to make sure that I know that number.
We don't have a firm number of employees that they have there. What we did with our adjustments is we looked at the square footage of the GAP versus the square footage of our project, and same with the Matrix facility. So on a 1,000 square foot basis is how we did our adjustments.
Adjustments for traffic or for employees?
For traffic, based on the truck trips and we also looked at the passenger vehicle trips for those facilities as well.
Okay. So you're saying you can't find out how many employees they have?
We don't know how many they have precisely.
Okay.
Okay, Eric, ready?
Yeah.
Okay, we did have one come in from Tuesday, November 3rd at 6:31 p.m. It's from Frank Munno. I see the name on the screen, but I'll read what he wrote to us. And again, whether it has something to do with a special permit, I believe this entire process we did here this evening is about the special permit, and it will come again as soon as we write up on what we hear. We'll be in contact with the developer and see about certain things, and we'll include it in the special permit, and it will be discussed in public as well. Okay, dear town board members, below please find my question and concerns regarding campus and field abandonment and demapping of Barrett Road. 1, how many trucks will be entering and exit from and to Route 312 on a daily basis? Response: 2 different formulas were used in the FEIS to estimate truck trips. Based on the counts conducted at the GAP Distribution Center in Fishkill and Matrix Business Park in Newburgh, the project is expected to generate 130 truck trips per day, or about 65 trucks enter and exit each day. However, ITE data indicates that the proposed project could generate 424 truck trips, 212 truck entering and exiting per weekday business days. 2, what type of fuel will the trucks be using? Response: diesel. 3, where will they be filling station and where will they be fueling their trucks? Response: will Will there be a filling station at the facility for fueling the trucks? The answer, no. 4, if they don't have their own fueling station, where will the trucks obtain their fuel? Response, local, regional, and national filling stations along the routes they travel. Again, not knowing the end user, we have no idea where the trucks are going, coming to, going from, and that will be determined at some point in time. But they're going to go to a gas station similar to what we do. 5, what destination will the trucks be traveling to? Response, again, local, regional, and national destinations. Not knowing an end user, can't really answer the question. 6, what type of products will the trucks be transporting and receiving? Response, again, not knowing the end user of the facility, unknown at this time. 7, what is the total length of trucks? Response, approximately 60% of the trucks entering the campus would be tractor trailers, 53 feet, and 40% would be straight box type trucks. 8, can trucks travel east to Route 22 with no restrictions? Now, east is making a left going, east is, I believe, now in my, Ashley, help me out on this. East would be going toward 22?
Yeah, actually logged off, but east would be going towards like Kelly's.
Yeah, that's how I respond. Response, large trucks are not currently permitted to travel along Route 312 to, well, this says to Route 6. Large trucks, 53-foot trailers are not permitted to travel along Route 312 toward Route 22 beyond 1 mile from Interstate 84. These restrictions will not change with the proposed project. 9, when leaving the facility, will there be any restrictions on the amount of trucks leaving at the same time? Response, no, but they will be restricted by hours of operation and days a week. So I'll be forwarding that to them in writing tomorrow, and that's it. Now, what I'm going to be recommending this evening, like we've done with almost all public hearings, we will extend the written comment period for 10 days. Is there any more comment from the board? Okay, so I make a motion then to extend the written comment period for 10 additional days.
Second.
And to close the hearing, Mr. Hay?
We're not closing the public hearing. The public hearing will remain open for 10 days by written comment.
Okay.
Well, I thought we usually close the public hearing, but just leave it open for 10-day comment, written comment only.
I don't think so. Will?
It's somatic, really.
Yeah.
Okay.
10 days from now, it's closed. We got 10 days for written comment.
Okay.
Is there a second?
Second.
Roll call vote. On the motion for the 10-day public hearing extension.
Okay, Councilman Alvarez,
Yes.
Councilman Larka,
Yes.
Councilman Lord,
I'd like it to be extended longer and have another public hearing at the next town board meeting.
well,
Is that a yes or a no?
yeah, it's a vote, so you have to say yes or no.
That's a no, thank you.
Okay, Councilman O'Connor.
Yes.
And Supervisor Hay.
Yes. 10-day period for written comment. After that, we'll take all the written comments, all the comments this evening, and we'll start drafting the special permit, which will be read into the record at some point in time for discussion. Okay. I think all of you came for that portion of it. Now we're going to the regular portion of the meeting. I make a motion to go into the work session.
Thank you very much, Supervisor. Thank you very much, members.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Tony, can I ask one other question?
Yeah.
Once we have all the written comments and we have the the proposition to go to the special permit, will we have another public hearing to present that to the public or no?
I believe we just be a discussion of the board, but it would not, again, we have it on as a work session, okay?
Okay.
And then we go to an actual vote 2 weeks later.
Okay, so
It's like we do with any other project. Nothing changes. John, this has been out in the public for 2 years. What we've heard repeatedly, good comments, not changing, and
no, we've heard a lot of good comments tonight. We've heard a lot of things that were required or that needed some answers. Are we going to be getting answers from the developer before we put something together as a final?
I know questions I'm going to be asking them, so I'm quite sure, and you can ask them questions too.
Okay. Thank you.
That's, again, we're gonna be drafting it based on comments, discussion with them. We will draft this special permit. And the one thing I don't like about the whole process, because I think it's ass backwards, I hope you don't mind me saying that, because this should have been done first and not last. You can't have a person go through an application for 2.5 years and then come back and say, no, don't work that way. It's terrible, but that's the process.
Well, Tony,
Okay.
if I could just interject one thing, it was determined early on that what is proposed by the applicant as a fulfillment center is light manufacturing.
Yes,
Light manufacturing is a specially permitted use in that zone. So when you have a special permit use, there is the ability to make a determination that this particular use meets the special criteria that are set up in the code. And also you can impose other special conditions that would help mitigate whatever concerns your board might determine as a result of these public hearings. And Dan, if you disagree with my analysis of that, please let me know.
No, well, I think you said it well.
and that's why you got lawyers, and I'm quite sure people will be hiring lawyers. Okay, so I'm making a motion now to go into the work session.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, first item for discussion is no parking and standing. John O'Connor was one of our better enforcement people out there late at night doing this. So maybe he can appreciate some of what we're going to attempt to do. Now, 131-9, no parking or standing anytime. I have outlined a proposed change to the wording and something new as well. So all of you had the work session in front of you? Pretty much?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Argonne Road parking and standing shall be prohibited on both sides of the road from, it used to say the intersection of Route 6 on the easterly end of Argonne Road to the intersection of Argonne Road and Route 6 at the westerly terminated Argonne Road, base of the Veterans Memorial Bridge. Okay, here's what happened. It's not the entire road. For those of you, there's the building on the end down by Brewster Ford. That's the easterly portion. And when you come up to the high bridge, that was the section that was no parking. There are signs there saying no parking. But the way it reads here, it goes all the way out to the mobile station by the village line. So we're clarifying it ends at that bridge. That's what this wording is doing. Next one is on Putnam Avenue. Now that's down by Brewster Heights. It says, let's see, parking and standing shall be prohibited on both sides of the road from the intersection of Putnam Avenue with New York State 6 at Juville Road toward Bloomer Road. Well, there's bike trail parking there. So that there will have to be changed, which we'll have to reword because there is parking there. Now, people have asked not to allow cars to park there because it's kind of dangerous. They're backing out and things of that nature. So it's something that we have to review. Now, on Railroad Avenue, which is from the train station down to Route 22, it says parking and standing shall be prohibited on both sides of the road from the border of the Village Brewster to the terminus at New York State Route 22. Now, about sometime early in the year, or no, it had to be last year, we put parking in there for the diverting trail reservoir. So we're going to reword that to allow parking in that section of it.
Tony, could I just interject a second? The parking that we have for the diverting trail is off the road. This is no parking on the side of the road. That's what this section of the code is meant to refer to.
So if a person is over by Brewster Ford and they park off the road, it's okay to do that? That's not the way.
If they're parking on private property.
I thought this was to stop people that were parking there for the train, so they were like allowed to park there for a certain period.
I think Will's trying to say to me is we don't have to change it. They're not parking. They're not parking on the road, but even by Brewster Ford, they're not parking they're parking off the shoulders.
Well, they're
That's
parking
the way I interpret.
they're parking parallel on the road, and there should be signs that say no parking.
Okay.
And whether they're up or they're not up, but they were up at one time, at least on Argonne Road.
Well, some of them are, but the way this reads, it goes all the way to Route 22. Well, I'll tell you what,
I
I'll talk to
understand,
you.
but it goes to Route 22 from one end to the other, but where there's portions of the road off of Argonne Road that are owned by Bull
and Barrel.
Bull and Barrel are that's private property. We
get-
can't conduct how they park on private property.
And that's what I was trying to clarify with this. Okay, I'll tell you what. I'll talk to you further on this.
Okay.
It says, and then independent way, parking on both sides of the road. Well, here's the bigger issue. As you know, the bikeway will be opening at some point in time over by Pump House Road. And I was out there today, and I go by there a lot because we're doing some work out there, getting ready to put in a new swing set and enlarge the park out there. People are parking on Pump House Road. Now, once you cross the railroad tracks, they're starting to park. Now, first of all, they're not even supposed to be on the bikeway. And I'm telling you right now, the place is packed. And they're quite unhappy that it's even being used. They don't get it. It's still under construction, but it's being used a bunch. So at the end of the road on Pump House Road, there's parking for probably 8 to 10 vehicles for the trail, which we authorized MTA. Well, actually, the MTA put it in because they didn't want to have the contract for it. But any other portion of parking on Pump House Road will be illegal, because I want to add that to the list of roads that are on that list.
That's perfectly appropriate.
Yep.
Because
And-
right now, you can park on town roads unless otherwise prohibited,
Right.
depending on the time of year, actually.
Right.
And I brought up John earlier because we have I've received for a while, more recently, Brewster Heights. Now, when I moved up there in 1957, which was a long time ago, Donna Reed and, housewives stayed home, okay? And now, when we were there, we were kids. Well, some of us have grown up to be really old, had our own kids and things of that nature. And parking up there, the driveways maybe will hold one car if you're lucky, okay? 2, there's families up there with 3, 5, and 6 cars, and it's become an absolute jungle. Now, during the wintertime, they park, the plows can't get through, and recently up on, I guess, North Road is the worst one. People have sent me some pictures. It's really a nightmare. So I'm going to be in contact with, I guess they have a neighborhood watch up there, and talk to Mike Burdick. I'll talk to John O'Connor. He has some experience up there. What can we do about it? We can't permit him really to park on the road possibly, but something's got to be done. And we have to put our foot down. During the wintertime, they pretty much have, when they were ticketed about 2 years ago. But during the summertime, it's really become a real mess. So we'll bring this back up again. I'm going to try to work with them and the ones here on the town board have some experience on it, and Mike Burdick, to find out what are we going to do to try to alleviate. That is probably one of the worst areas in our town. So that'll come back.
Out of curiosity, Tony, do you think that because this particular summer, so many families got back together and because of COVID quarantine or whatever, that there may have been more concentration of people up there? And
It could help a little bit, but I'm telling you right now, the problem's been around for the last couple of years, and it's time we have to address it, I believe. So I'll bring it back up as we have more discussion on it, but it's an issue, and Pump House Road is going to be a big issue coming down the road as well. So it's going to come back soon. But I want to talk to Will about how I interpret it and see if it's different than his interpretation of it.
Hey, Tony?
Yes.
With Pump House Road, Metro North has their parking facility for the trail at the very end after the house. Would it be possible for people to use the parking areas where the tennis courts are?
Absolutely not. And that's why we're doing it. Because when we start to use that facility for us, because again, what they called Castle Park is coming down and a new park is going there.
Okay,
We're talking about possibly putting in another, the tennis courts are there. There's two little ball fields there where the kids play the T-ball type stuff. We
Right.
got the town beach. We don't want these people, I'm telling you right now, I was up there today, there was about 10 cars parked there already. And I understand this is one of the nicer sections of the trail, and every brother and their brother is gonna go there. So one, there's like only parking there for 7 to probably 10 cars, 2 definitely handicapped. We gotta do something, and we can't have them parking on town property because we need that space ourselves.
okay, fine. How about times of year? Because I think wintertime, it's not gonna have a lot of use for the beach and for the tennis courts. And I think that the trail might find walkers and maybe cross-country skiers using it. And
Well, I have to talk, when we put that up, I did talk to them. I have to go back and look at what we determined, because we did not want it open during the winter time. Okay? Because it's an out of the way area, and I have to go back and see. I read the contract. I didn't see anything in the contract. So it could become an issue. We're leaving the gate open as it is now because we want, the bus has to turn around there. But the parking is going to be a severe problem, and especially during summertime. Now, if you relax at certain points of time of the year, we could put up signage, but I can see by just the past probably 3 to 5 weeks, it's getting bad.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Okay, next, discussion emergency declaration under 55 allowing to replace a cell tower. I'm actually going to pull this from the agenda this evening. There's still discussion going on. Even though they claim it's an emergency, they're not taking the tower down. So I don't think there's too much of an emergency. I think they're trying to, I won't say, I better watch what I say.
They're trying to avoid the time and expense that is required going through a planning board process. That's what they're
Thank you
doing.
for saying, he's an attorney. I was going to be afraid of that because I'm saying, I think they're trying to circumvent the rules.
Well, they're also pointing out a section of the code that has nothing to do with this. The section of the code that they reference has to do with a determination by the town board that a house or a structure is unsafe and allows the town to go in and do the replacement.
So in discussion with the building department today, I think they're going to be told, you got to go through the process. And I think it's a circumvention of the process. So that's going to be up to the town building department to handle, and we'll see that as it goes back and forth. Now, this has become something about memorial benches. People want to possibly put up benches in recognition of a family member and whatever. I think if we're going to consider, we're going to have to maybe formulate a policy. If we want a policy, where do you put a bench? Wherever you put a bench, you might put a garbage can, and it becomes a problem. Now, I did recommend to the people, John, that they maybe should contact the county, because on the bike trail, it'd be an excellent place to put a couple of benches along the bike trail. As people are walking, they might need a place to rest. I don't know where they want to put them elsewhere in town, but what are your people's thoughts on that? You had an opportunity to read that? And John, and you're not representing the county, but again, the bike trail, again, people are walking and might want to take a rest. So, we could approach the county and ask them, but what do we want to do in our town? Couldn't hear you.
I said, I wasn't sure which John you were referring to.
I'm sorry. You work for the county. John, the other John's retired. He's done.
But
Okay.
there's been benches that have gone on to some of the county campuses already. I'll look into it further, but I know just a little bit about it right now from what you're telling me. So.
Okay, when you say the county, what did you say, county?
Some of the county properties, I think at the Smith campus, they recently put in some benches over there.
Okay. If we put one here, town hall, I don't know. It just, you put one, and what happens if you get 101? I just don't know. I think we should formulate some kind of so anyway, could you check with the county and see if they have any kind of a policy, and should we create a policy?
Sure, I can look into that for you.
Okay, very good. Okay, that's it for that. I make a motion now to go into the regular meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Number 1, resolution approved 2021 town budget. Now therefore be resolved that the town board of the town of Southeast hereby adopts the 2021 preliminary budget as amended and for an annual budget for the town of Southeast for 2021 budget year, and be further resolved that the town clerk is authorized and directed to cause a copy of the 2021 annual budget as adopted to be published on the town's website, and that sufficient copies therefore be made available to the town clerk's office for public inspection. So move for discussion.
Second.
Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, number 2, resolution, Coles settled certiorari. Now therefore be resolved that the town board of the town of Southeast does hereby accept the recommendations of professional advisors and authorizes the town attorney to execute a stipulation of settlement, consent judgment, and or order on consent in accordance with said recommendation for the following. Petitioner, Coles Inc., tax ID 56.1-23.2, year 2019, assessment $7,705,900, settled assessment $6,936,025. EH2 LLC / KIN, KIN, Inc., tax ID 56.1-23.2, what's this older someone? Year 2020, assessment $7,860,000, settled assessment $7,074,745. And be further resolved that the town attorney is hereby authorized and directed to execute any and all stipulations, consent orders, or other documents necessary to reflect the foregoing settlement. So move for discussion.
Second.
Discussion.
Could I just point out a minor typographical error on the second, on the 2020 tax year? The tax ID, there should be a -2. It's .-2.
Okay.
Like to reflect the number just above it. Same property, just the ownership changed hands in between 19 and 20.
Okay.
That's still Coles?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, so a motion, I'll make the motion on the amendment to change to -2. Is there a second on the motion?
Second.
On the entire resolution, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That's with the change. Okay, number 3, set performance bond for Barrett Hill. Now therefore be resolved that the bond amount shall be established for the project set forth below. Project name, Barrett Hill Associates. Bond amount, site improvements, $2,890,000. Erosion and sediment control, $85,500. And be further resolved that upon posting of erosion and sediment control bond for the project, the town clerk is hereby authorized to release any and all previously paid posted security for the project, it being understood that no certificate of occupancy or occupancy of any phase of the project shall be issued or permitted until the site improvements for such phase have been fully completed or a satisfactory bond for completion of such improvements has been authorized and posted with the town. And be further resolved that a certified copy of this resolution shall be transmitted by the town clerk to the planning board secretary and building inspector forthwith. So move for discussion.
Second.
Discussion.
Yeah, Tony,
Go.
question. You mentioned something about town doing work up at Castle Park. I thought that the Barrett Hill developers were going to be contributing funds and doing the work on reconstructing Castle Park. Has something?
They are, but this bond has nothing to do with that.
Well, I know, but we're talking about Barrett Hill, so I thought I'd ask the question.
Okay, so yes, there, Eric was up there the other day along with Kathy discussing removing the Castle Park, which has been pretty much obsolete for the past couple of years. Trees are gonna come down.
Yeah, John, or there was, and you know, this hits close to home. So, but the agreement was that they would pay for the removal of Castle Park and the replacement of it. There's some site work that we need to do to get it ready for that. And there's like a new piece of land that we acquired and joining the properties that was out of scope from what the agreement with Barrett Hill was when it was agreed to. So I think you're right that they are going to pay for it, but there's a little bit of work that the town will have to do as well.
And they also, John, they also paid recreation fees as well.
Right, no, I know that they were supposed to pay recreation fees, and were going to be giving us property, and that they were going to make a new Castle Park. And they were going to construct it themselves. I just wondered, has that agreement changed in some way? It sounds like it has.
You
And if
know,
it has, shouldn't we all see it?
see what?
The changes to the agreement.
Well, there was, when you say changes to the agreement, a lot of it was verbal. Okay.
I think a lot of it was also memorialized in the town board or the meetings.
Yeah,
Oh,
John,
but it's memorialized in a resolution, okay? The gentleman, when we were doing it initially, the gentleman said that, you know, we came up with a number. He said that he could do it cheaper, and he's living up to that portion of the word. Now, about the site work, that's not written anywhere, so we may have to do some of the site work there. He said he would cut the trees, remove the park that's currently there. We may, with our highway department, have to go up there and level off the land somewhat, and he will be paying, and I believe, installing the new equipment. Now, he's paying for it, whether installation, I can't say. That's kind of a gray area.
And has the property transfer also changed?
Oh, yeah, he gave us, I don't know if he did or not. He gave us,
Well, Eric just said something about it changing.
No, John, I was talking about a few years ago, there was a sliver of land between Castle Park and the other park that's there. It doesn't even make sense that we never owned it, but there was like a 50-foot piece of land that somebody donated to us a few years ago.
Yeah, somebody owned it from a inheritance, and
Right. And John, I'd have to agree with you that the agreement for the Castle Park was probably not as robust as it could have been. And because of that, there's some site work and things that we'll probably have to do, unfortunately.
Okay, cool. Sorry to, distract from the resolution for site bonds, and but I just wanted to get some clarification on this. So thank you.
we're trying to clarify it as well as we move on.
Actually, for Will, I'd sent you an email about an older agreement in 2017 on all the recreation stuff for Barrett Hill. Do we need another one? I don't recall seeing a response on that.
I don't know that we, when you say you remember seeing an older agreement, there's the agreement that I think you're referring to was a series of documents that were generated. Nothing was ever executed that I know of.
Correct.
And that, if you feel that is, I think what I thought was at the time that was somewhat redundant to the directives that were set forth in our in the special permit, the grant of special permit, and the resolutions approving Barrett Hill. But if you think that we need to have a separate agreement restating what is already in the other resolutions, we could certainly do it.
Well, no, I mean, my question was, do you think that we need that? And if you don't think so, that your counsel, that's fine. So
I think that they're bound by the terms of the special permit.
Okay. So the answer is no. Thank you.
I mean, just unrelated to Castle Park, there were some things in those agreements that were referenced in the resolutions, but I don't think as well detailed in the resolutions. Unrelated to Castle Park, some of the community benefits.
We can certainly the community benefit agreement is something that they're in the process of discussing currently, but the community benefit agreement is really aimed at memorializing the set-asides of the workforce housing, and that document would ultimately be recorded and as part of the land records of the county, and anybody that buys the property going forward would buy it subject to the terms of that community benefit agreement, as I understand it.
Castle Park does have a little bit of gray area, and we'll try to get it resolved.
Yeah, the document I was referring to is it was the recreation contribution to the town. But okay.
Okay, number 4, Set performance bond for Hardscrabble Tennis Club. Now therefore be resolved.
I don't think we.
We didn't vote?
on that one
You
yet.
didn't vote on it.
Why not?
Discussion.
Okay.
That was
All
all.
in all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Can I go now? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, set performance bond, Hardscrabble Tennis Club. Now therefore be resolved that the bond amount shall be established for the project set forth below. Project name, Hardscrabble Tennis Club. Site improvements, $68,000. Erosion and sediment control, $6,000. Resolved that upon posting of erosion and sediment control bond for the project and payment of appropriate inspection fees, the application may obtain a building permit for such site improvements, and be further resolved, a certified copy of this resolution shall be transmitted by the town clerk to the planning board secretary and building inspector forthwith. So move for discussion.
Second.
Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Number 5, a resolution, ARB recommendation, Alf Core LLC, 291 Dean's Corner Road. Now therefore be resolved that the town board hereby accepts and approves the report of the Architectural Review Board dated October 30, 2020, in connection with the application of Alfcor, it's ALFACOR, which seeks to amended site plan approval for a commercial project located at 291 Dean's Corner Road, tax map number ID 78.-2-25. A copy of the ARB review and report is annexed here too and made part hereof. And that such a report shall be incorporated in any final site plan subsequently reviewed and approved for this project by the planning board. So move for discussion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Rob, I see you're on there. Congratulations. Number 6, resolution, ARB recommendation, We Design LLC, 3867 Danbury Road. Now therefore be resolved that the town board hereby accepts and approves the report of the Architectural Review Board dated October 30, 2020, in connection with the application of We Design, it's WDESIGNE LLC, which seeks amended site plan approval for a commercial project located at 3867 Danbury Road, tax map number 69.13-1-23. A copy of the ARB review and report is annexed here too and made part hereof, and that such a report shall be incorporated in any final site plan subsequently reviewed and approved for this project by the planning board. So move for discussion.
Second.
Okay, brief discussion. I am not abstaining from this because I did own this property at one point in time. I sold it and it's now another owner, but I'm going to vote for it. I'm quite sure this gentleman had a place over there in Peekskill. He's moved into Putnam County from Westchester County, and we're going to accept him with open arms. It's a woodworking place, and he's got, I think he's got 3 stores across the front. I think one's going to be a restaurant and 2 other, at the time was zoned for commercial, not resident, commercial, everything to do. I went for everything we could get. So I think it should be a good thing. And it'll help clean up the property because it's gone down a little bit. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, next is a set of public hearing notice for local law to co-designate the planning board as the ARB. And that will be for, what's the next meeting, Michelle, the 19th?
I don't have my calendar in front of me.
Okay, so today is what, the
That sounds right.
Yeah,
19th. So set a public hearing for the 19th of November to co-designate planning board as the ARB. So move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, public comment. Eric, want to tell people how they make public comment?
Yes, you can press *9 if you're dialed in, or you can go to participant list and next to your name, you should be able to raise your hand. There's really not that many people on, so I'll just make it so you can just unmute yourself.
If you'd like to
Good evening,
speak.
everyone. It's Scott Seaman from
Go
the
ahead,
Brewster
Scott.
Board of Ed. Hope everyone's doing well. Just wanted to give you an update. We just had our Brewster Vision 2025 meeting a night or 2 ago. We're looking to the next 5-year strategic plan, and we're looking for public input. We had the key communicators meeting this morning, just to keep everybody informed of what's going on. And on a case of bad news, we did have some issues with COVID. The last 2 days, we had to close the schools and go to complete distance learning. Hopefully on Monday, we're going back to the hybrid model or whatever the model the students happen to be at that time. Just wanted to keep you informed. And once again, thank you for what you're doing for our kids in our school. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, do you have any more information about the outbreak? How many people or any of that?
We don't have specific numbers, I guess, due to HIPAA laws, but I believe it was a transportation issue. And there was multiple times in multiple areas. So they've worked with the Department of Health to backtrace whoever needed to quarantine. Supposedly is under quarantine at this time. But once again, overabundance of safety. The school issue was closed, and I guess all sports were also canceled through Sunday, just to keep our numbers at a low level, because it is starting to spike in the area.
Thanks, Scott, and thanks for all you do too.
All right.
Hey,
Thanks.
guys, just in case, I want to tell you, my battery is running low and I don't have my cord here. So if you lose me, my phone is at 14%. I can't wait to leave early. But at any rate, who's next?
Anybody else? It doesn't look like anybody else, Tony.
Town board members. Okay, I'll say something in case I lose myself. Okay. One, I want to thank all that participated in this year's election. Bad times, the Board of Elections did a very good job. The lines are absolutely outrageous all over the county. Some are happy with some of the outcomes and whatever, but it's a participation of all, something with a public duty. And I do want to thank all the people who voted. I am telling you now, the lines were really outrageous. At Town Hall, I had, some seniors call me. We kind of escorted in front of the line. Everyone was very courteous that stood in line. And I think we all outdid ourselves on this one, because not everyone, 99.99% of people were very, very kind and gracious, allowing, people, with their children and carriages to come to the front of the line. I think if we have to do this again next time, we have to have a little bit better planning, maybe what takes place, for seniors and things of that nature. But overall, it came out really well. So I'm very happy and proud the way everyone conducted themselves. Anyone else? Seeing none, I will entertain a motion.
Make a motion, we close the next meeting.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you all for coming. Good night.
Good night.
Have a good night, everyone.